All right, strap in, everyone, because today we're going deep into a case that just, well, it stays with you. You know the kind.
Definitely one of those.
It's the Rachel Nickell murder. Wimbledon Common, 1992.
Mm.
A lot of you are probably here because true crime, that's your jam.
Yeah,
Or maybe it's British crime in particular that grabs you.
right.
But I think even if those aren't usually your thing, the way this case played out, how the investigation went, that'll hook anyone.
Oh, for sure. Well, it reveals a lot about the times, the police, how things were done.
Exactly.
Mm.
We're not just going to say, okay, here's who did it and be done.
Yeah.
We're going into the why, the how, all of it. Police procedures, profiling, even how the media got involved, but got to set the scene first, right?
Absolutely. Can't jump right into the darkness without the backdrop.
So picture this. Wimbledon Common. It's huge, beautiful, green space, right in southwest London. People go there to escape the city, feel safe. It's July 15th, 1992, summer day. Rachel Nickell, she's 23, out walking with her son. He's only 2, little Alex, and they've got their dog with them, Molly. Then in broad daylight, this attack. Brutal. She's murdered. Over 40 stab wounds. I mean, it's just horrific.
Awful.
And the only witness is this little boy clinging to his mom.
It's just the horror of it right through the community. And you can imagine the police under immense pressure.
I bet. 1,000-acre crime scene. Public's terrified. The media's on them like...
Oh, absolutely. Hungry for anything. And the problem was forensic evidence. There wasn't much to go on.
Really? So that's why they brought in a profiler?
Partly, yeah. It was becoming more common than profiling. They got Paul Britton, top guy in the UK at the time.
Okay, so Britton, what does he come up with?
Well, he starts building this profile. Killer's probably 20s, 30s, loner type, maybe into the occult, that sort of thing. But, and this is key, this profile, it really steered the whole investigation. Might have even narrowed their focus too much, some would say.
Ah, so that's where we get into those big questions. Like, is profiling helpful or does it make you miss things?
Huge debate. Even today, did it help them catch the right guy or did it lead them down the wrong path entirely?
And that path seems to have led straight to Colin Stag. Local guy, lived near the Common, kept to himself a bit, had some books on, you guessed it, the occult.
Right, ticking boxes from the profile. And he'd had this, well, indecent exposure charge in the past, which he'd admitted to kind of naively, it seems.
So they're thinking they've got their man.
It really seemed that way. They arrest him, long interrogations, but no confession. And that's when things take a turn. They launch Operation Edsel. Wild stuff.
Okay, I gotta hear this.
Undercover female officer, Lizzie James, fake name, of course. She's tasked with befriending Stag. Letters, phone calls, the whole 9 yards.
Wait, so they were trying to, like, trick him?
Essentially, yeah. Honey trap is what they call it. Risky move, ethically. Well, very questionable. But they were convinced they had a dangerous killer on their hands, so...
So Lizzie, she's writing to him, making up stories about what?
Oh, she gets into it. Dark fantasies is how they put it. Hoping he'd, slip up, reveal something. And Stag, he's lonely, wants to connect with this woman, so he starts writing back.
Trying to impress her.
More like mirror her, I think. He mentions the occult, hints at violent fantasies, stuff the police saw as proof. But looking back, it's possible he was just playing along, fitting into the world she'd created for him.
Wow, that's messed up. But hold on, while all this is happening, the real killer's out there, right?
Oh, yeah. And this is where things get even darker. Because he wasn't exactly a stranger to the police. There was already a trail, a terrifying one, through southeast London.
You're talking about Robert Napper, right? I know that name. Wasn't he linked to those green chain rapes?
You got it. And his story, how it all ties into this, chills you to the bone. We'll get into that next. But for now, just remember, all eyes were on Colin Stag. And that focus, as we'll see, it had huge consequences. It's really, it's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. Stag caught up in all this fake evidence, and meanwhile, you've got Napper just out there. His story is, well, it's dark, really dark.
I read about those green chain rapes. Oof, the name alone, right? It's like these peaceful, wooded areas, and then such brutality. I mean, how could someone do that in broad daylight? It's almost, I don't know, it's hard to grasp.
And what makes it worse, there were so many points where he could have been stopped. Missed chances. Real what-if moments.
What kind of chances?
Well, think about this. After the first attack, Napper's own mother, she goes to the police. She's horrified, right? Her own son told her what he'd done, begged them to investigate him. But get this, some mix-up paperwork or whatever. Her report. Just ignored.
You're kidding. His own mother warned them. That's, I mean, talk about a missed opportunity. So many lives maybe could have been different.
It's chilling. You realize how much comes down to just people and choices. A mother's plea, just lost in the system. And there's more. Napper, he was even ID'd by witnesses in the Green Chain cases. Twice they asked him for a DNA sample.
So close, right? Hit him right there.
But he just didn't show both times. And the police, for whatever reason, they let it go, didn't push it. It's like a chain of failures, you know?
Yeah.
Leading right up to, well, him being free to do more.
It's crazy. While Stag is being made out to be this monster, the real one.
Exactly. And things escalate. November 1993, Samantha Bissett, she's murdered along with her little girl Jasmine, 4 years old, their home in Plumstead, southeast London. The scene, brutal, doesn't even cover it.
God, that's awful. Just a child. It makes you, I don't know, wonder if anything makes sense sometimes.
And even then, more warning signs. Napper had been seen around Bissett's place days before. She even reported it, said she was scared.
But they still hadn't made the connection to the Green Chain, to Nickell.
Nope. Stag was it. That was their guy. The belief in his guilt, it was so strong they couldn't see anything else. Even Britton, the profiler, he'd worked on both cases, but nothing.
Everyone looking the wrong way. Like the answer was right there, but they were blind to it.
Classic tunnel vision. And the price, it was horrific. So 3 investigations, Green Chain, Nickell with Stag as the focus, then Bissett. All happening within a pretty small area, but no one's putting it together.
So what finally breaks this open? What makes them see Napper for who he is?
Well, the Bissett murders, they were so bad, it forced a different level of investigation. Pressure was on, big time. And they find a fingerprint at the scene.
Okay, that's got to be hard to argue with. A fingerprint.
It was, but there's a delay, you know, procedures, stuff, takes time. But that print, it comes back to Robert Napper.
Put and go, finally. The guy they had missed this whole time.
You got it. And once they have him, it starts to unravel.
Yeah.
DNA from the Green Chain matches. The picture of what Napper had been doing, it becomes clearer and clearer.
But what about Stag? Napper's in custody now, but Stag's still headed for trial, right? What happens when they realize, it's like, I don't know, the whole thing kind of falls apart, doesn't it? They've got Napper, he's the guy, but they're still going after Stag. Tough spot to be in.
Oh, for sure. They built this case, right? Operation Edsel, all that. And now it's like, whoops.
And that whole honey trap thing, so messed up to begin with.
Totally. Huge ethical questions there. I mean, you're talking about entrapment, manipulating someone who's, well, let's face it, Stag was pretty vulnerable, easy to lead.
So what happened when it got to court? Did they just, like, stop the trial once they had Napper?
You know what? They didn't even get that far. The judge, he wasn't having any of it. Took one look at that Edsel evidence, the letters, and basically said, nope.
Seriously, just tossed it all out. That's kind of awesome, actually.
It was. Called it exactly what it was, a honey trap. Said they were trying to make Stag fit the crime. The evidence was basically useless.
So Stag walks.
He does. 14 months he spent in prison, cleared of the murder charge. But you can imagine, right, what that does to a person.
I mean, yeah, accused, locked up. Everyone thinks you're this horrible killer, and then it's like, oh, never mind.
It's rough. Stag got compensation from the police later on, a formal apology, but that doesn't really fix it, you know? Your life's been turned upside down. People remember.
It shows how even when things go right in the end, the damage is done. But what about Napper then? What's his story from there?
Well, his trial for the Bissett murders, that's 1995. But here's the thing. Before they even really get going, Napper pleads guilty. Manslaughter, he says. Diminished responsibility.
So saying he did it, but not like fully responsible.
Right. And he admits to other attacks, too. Rapes, attempted rapes, the Green Chain, it's all him.
So that plea, it meant he didn't go to regular prison, right?
Exactly. Instead, it's Broadmoor, high-security psychiatric hospital, indefinitely.
And that's where things circle back to Rachel, don't they?
It is. Because now they know, right? Napper's the guy. So they go back, look at the Nickell evidence again, and remember that DNA sample? Tiny speck from her clothes.
Yeah, the one they couldn't test properly way back when.
That's it.
Yeah.
By 2002, technology's caught up, new team on the case, they run the test, and it's a match. Robert Napper.
No doubt about it this time.
Not a chance. They even found paint flecks in Alex's hair, the little boy. Matched Napper's toolbox, case closed.
So 2008, they finally charge him with Rachel's murder.
Yep. And with all that evidence against him, what's he going to do? He pleads guilty. Manslaughter, again, the diminished responsibility thing.
I can't imagine what Rachel's family went through, you know. Finally, the truth. But it took so long. And all those mistakes along the way.
It's heartbreaking. The Nickell case, it really shows how the system can fail, how human error, tunnel vision, it has consequences. The police procedures, how they communicated, profiling itself, all came under scrutiny.
It's heavy stuff. What are we supposed to take away from all this?
Makes you think, right? We got to question things. Look deeper. Justice, it's rarely simple. Even when you think it's open and shut, there's always more of the story.
I think that's what stayed with me, doing these deep dives. Behind every case, it's people's lives. The impact, the ripples, they go on and on. It's easy to forget that just reading the news or whatever.
We owe it to those involved, the victims, their families, to learn from these cases, make sure the systems get better, that something good comes out of the tragedy.
Well said. And for all of you listening, keep that in mind. These aren't just stories. They're real lives. And it's up to all of us to, I don't know, learn from what happened, demand better. That's what I'm taking away anyway.